Hey guys, what's up? I'm Isaac and welcome to my YouTube channel. So a little bit about me. I was born in India and then I moved to Hong Kong when I was 13 years old. And then after that, I came to Canada to study at the University of Waterloo. I'm studying mathematics and business administration and I'm scheduled to graduate next year. And my last two internships were at Bolt, the online checkout company. And in the fall, I'll be going to Spotify as a backend engineer intern. So today, I'll be walking you through my resume, which helped me get interviews from companies like Stripe, Robinhood, Coursera, Apple, Amazon, but most notably, Spotify, which I'm sure is the reason that you guys actually clicked on the video. So I decided to go into software engineering in the beginning of 2021. And a year and a half later, I made it to Spotify. And along the way, I learned a lot, applied to a lot of different companies, got a lot of rejections, passed a few interviews, and came out with a few good offers. So when I first actually came to university, I wanted to go into finance. I wanted to work on the business side of things. And after doing a few co-ops in that field, I decided to switch to software engineering. Looking back, it was a pretty crazy choice because the first time that I actually wrote code was in my university's CS 116 class, which, if you guys know, is a first year CS course. And the highest level of CS course that I've taken is actually just CS 136, which is also a first year CS course. So without any algorithms or data structures knowledge, without any background in software engineering, and obviously not having a CS degree, I still decided to go into software engineering. In this video though, I'm going to walk you through my resume and I'm going to show you how exactly I geared it towards software engineering in order to maximize my chances of getting an interview with any company. I will also be taking you through my creative process on how I take everything that I've done in an internship and I break it down into 3 or 4 good bullet points in a way that actually make you stand out in the resume screening process. But if you guys want to know all the prep and advice that I have on how to break into software engineering, I will be making a video on that in the near future. So yeah, please stick around. But yeah, without further ado, let me pull up my resume. So let's start with the format and layout first. So as you can see, it follows a pretty basic layout with skills, work experience, projects, and then education. So you guys are probably wondering why my education section is at the bottom. That's because, as I mentioned earlier, I don't actually have a computer science degree. So in order to take attention away from that fact, I buried it at the bottom because I wanted to showcase my skills, my experience, and my projects first so that by the time the recruiter gets to the bottom of my resume and figures out that they've been bamboozled, they would hopefully still give me a chance because of my previous experience. So for languages, I personally don't think that you have to be an expert in all of the languages you decide to put down. For me, if I can solve FizzBuzz in the language, I'm putting that down. Because when you're applying for internships or new grad roles at big companies, you are most likely applying to generalist SWE positions, which means that knowledge of specific languages isn't required. But if you're applying, for example, to a front-end specific role, then obviously try to put down front-end frameworks like React and prioritize those over other languages and frameworks. Moving on to tools and technologies, again, if I've used it once, it's definitely going on my resume. For example, here I have both relational and non-relational databases and Docker or something similar for containerization software for DevOps and popular cloud monitoring services like Datadog or Splunk. Now let's dive into the meat of your resume, which is your work experience section. This section is obviously the most important section when it comes to passing the resume screen. So in order to actually stand out from the crowd through your bullet points in this section, I try to make sure that my resume communicates the following 3 things. Number 1, that you are actually qualified for the role, meaning that you have relevant work experience or projects. Number 2, you made an impact in the past companies that you worked for. This means that you didn't just actually coast around or slack off during your internship, that you actually changed something, optimized something, and you actually delivered results that were measurable. Number 3, you actually had responsibility in your past work experiences, which means that the work you did wasn't just menial tasks. You actually did impactful things that helped the company move forward, that your work actually advanced the project and helped the company as a whole. So in order to actually write good bullet points, and this is pretty trivial information, but you actually need to work on impactful projects during your internships. So what I did with my internships was that I just chose the highest impact project that I could find. And going into the project, I sometimes had absolutely zero idea on how to implement the required features or even how to go about like scoping out the project. But by putting yourself in those kind of situations, you not only learn and grow as a developer, but you also come out with a lot of material and experience that can be used to write amazing bullet points. So let's take a look at one of my favorite bullet points. So one of the best bullet points that I've ever written, actually one of the best pieces of English that I've ever written, is this sentence right here. And it reads as follows: built API endpoints to enable 10 million plus shoppers to check out with Forever 21's products directly on Pinterest with 1 click. So hopefully it's pretty self-explanatory, but we'll break it down just in case. So what did I do? I built some API endpoints. And what impact did it have? Me building these endpoints enabled over 10 million shoppers to basically just check out with Forever 21's products on Pinterest in one click. So how do you actually come up with bullet points like that? Well, I've broken it down into a 3-step process that if you follow, you will also be able to write amazing bullet points that help you stand out from the crowd. Step 1, build the bullet point using the bottom-up approach. So first, what you want to do is make a list of the basic ideas that you want to communicate through your bullet point. For example, for the bullet point that I just showed you guys, I wanted to communicate the fact that I built API endpoints that would get triggered in the user flow. So that implies a high impact project. That millions of shoppers would potentially get to use this feature and check out in just one click. And I wanted to name drop Pinterest and Forever 21. So once you have a basic outline of what you want your resume reader to understand through your bullet point, you can move on to step 2. So step 2, combine all the ideas that you listed in step 1 into a readable sentence. For this step, all we want to do is come up with the first draft of the sentence, which is made up of all the points that we came up with in step 1. And don't worry if the sentence you come up with is trash, because the first draft will always be bad. We will worry about polishing the English, the sentence flow, and general understandability in step number 3. So a first draft that I came up with for my Pinterest bullet point was this. Build API endpoints for Pinterest to communicate with bold merchants such as Forever 21 for product information in order to facilitate buying of merchant products remotely on Pinterest. So as you guys can see, it's a pretty trash sentence. But that's okay because it's just a first draft. And as I said before, we'll be focusing on making it better in step 3. So step 3 is improve and iterate. In this step, we'll make sure that the grammar is right, that we're using action verbs, and most importantly, the sentence is easy to read and understand. So for step 3, the most important part is iterating, which means improving your bullet point and coming back to it every now and then and improving it all over again. So iterating is actually a process that is fundamental to almost every creative endeavor in life. For example, when you just start out at anything, you're going to be pretty bad at it. Or if you're just trying to learn a new skill, you're also going to be pretty bad at it. But that's fine because it's just part of the process. And making good bullet points is nothing different. The first time you actually try to write a new bullet point is going to be absolutely trash. But that's okay because you know what they say? Is trash can, not trash cannot. Nah, I'm joking. To really drive this point home, I'm going to show you guys the revision history of the Google Doc that I actually used to plan all of my resume bullet points in. And you guys will be able to see the first sentence I wrote and how I was able to improve it just a tiny bit every day in order to get to the final product. So this right here is the revision history of the Google Doc that I wrote all my resume bullet points in. So I created the document on September 24th, and I guess I didn't start brainstorming until October 15th. Basically just writing what projects I was working on and any future projects that were coming up at my internship, that would look impressive and impactful on my resume. Now let's skip to the middle of November. And again, it's mostly just brainstorming. So instead, let's skip to November 25th. And okay, this is the time where it looks like, some initial bullet points started to form. And as you guys can see, I'm trying to write the Pinterest bullet point a few different ways here. And yeah, let's continue to early December and see what's going on here. Yeah, as you guys can see here, I wrote the same bullet point. What is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different times. Just making, small changes each time and trying to really see, which one works better and which one is easier to understand and which one highlights the most impact. And let's check out December 20th now. And yeah, I guess, still just iterating on the same bullet point over and over again. And this bullet point right here is also one of my favorite ones, but I don't think this is the version that ended up on my resume. And as I go through the doc, you guys can see how I improved this one too. And moving on to December 25th. Oh wait, that's Christmas. Wait, I was working on Christmas? That's crazy. I'm just trying to think back as to what was going on at that time that I was working on Christmas. Oh yeah, it was COVID and everything was closed. So, and I was in Toronto, I think, and most of my friends had gone back, and I couldn't go back because of COVID. So I guess I was just doing this. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's the sad life of international students sometimes. Anyways, as you guys can see, there was more red lines here now, which means that it's looking good and I'm making progress. And finally, let's go to January 9th and see what's going on here. And yeah, as you guys can see, I changed this bullet point into this one over time. And I think the second one just highlights better impact and is easier to understand and looks more impressive overall. So yeah, that right there was my personal process on how I personally came up with my bullet points. I just really wanted to drive home the fact that I personally had to iterate a lot in order to get good at this specific skill of writing good bullet points. But after putting in all this work, now it takes me I think just like a day or two to come up with good bullet points. So over time, if you put in the work, you will get better at this for sure. I also try really hard to make sure that my bullet points fit in one line. So the goal is to minimize the amount of brain power required to understand what I wrote. Because you don't want somebody to reread your bullet points multiple times in order to understand what you did. And you have to write them in a way that even if people who are reading your resume don't really have a good understanding of the tools and technologies that you used, they will still be able to get a basic idea of what you did and what impact you had. So one trick that I use to make sure that my bullet points are easily understandable is that I'll send them to my friends who are not in tech. For example, I'd send them to my friends who are in science or who are in business and try to ask them and see that, hey, do you understand what I wrote? Do you get the basic ideas of what I did and what impact I had? And if they can understand it, then anybody can understand it. So this right here is an example of me sending a bullet point to a friend and asking them for feedback. I just send it to them and I always try to see if they can understand it without even asking any questions about it. Because if they can understand it without being like, oh, what does this mean? Or what is that? And asking a bunch of different questions, that means that the bullet point is pretty good and we've achieved our goal. So yeah, if you think that your bullet point is ready to go, make sure to send it to your friends who are in computer science and who are not in computer science, to really make sure that people without technical knowledge can understand what you did. Because if they can understand it, then that'll make sure that technical recruiters can also understand what you did and exactly what impact you drove. So with all that being said, I do know that the tech recruiting season for next year is around the corner and most companies are going to be opening their apps for next summer pretty soon. And they're going to receive thousands of applications. So if you are in a time crunch, I would be available for a 30-minute consultation on you guys' resumes. If you guys want to know more about that, there is a link in the description that will take you to a Google Docs page, which will outline the expectations of what I can help with and all the logistics related to the consultation. Okay, so the last two sections in my resume are projects and education. So for projects, I only just put down one, as relevant experiences definitely take precedence over your projects. But if you're someone with no experience in the field, then definitely put down your projects that demonstrate your skills first. And for projects, again, I was trying to follow the bullet point making formula that I explained before. In this case, my project wasn't really made for having an external impact, and the project was mostly just for me to learn more. And I tried to convey that using descriptive language about what features I implemented. And yeah, this resume as a whole was made in latex. I tried to make it as good looking as possible because no matter how trained you are against biases, humans inherently still want to look at beautiful things. So I just try to make my resume as physically appealing as possible. So yeah, that's about all I have for this video. You guys can find the link to the popular latex template that I use down below in the description. And you guys can also find a link to the course I followed in order to create my project also in the description. And following the tutorial on that project really helped me understand the ins and outs of full stack development and understand basic things like how the back end really communicates with the front end and how to do basic UI design in React and how to structure your database schema and all that stuff. So if you're just getting started in this field, I would personally recommend you follow this project or similar projects out there to really, get a basic understanding of everything. And if you guys want, you guys can also follow me on Instagram down below. Most importantly, the Google Doc for the resume consultation is also in the description. So please take a look at that and see how I potentially may be able to help you guys. And yeah, that's about it for this video, and I'll see you guys in a minute.